Welcome to Money Made Easy. If learning about money has ever felt confusing or stressful, you are in the right place. On this channel, we break down everyday financial topics in a simple, honest way so you can take control of your money without needing a degree in finance. Today, we are talking about the single most important step you can take for your financial health. It is not a secret investment strategy. It is not a new app. It is not a complicated trick to get rich quick. It is simply having a chunk of cash sitting in a boring bank account doing absolutely nothing. We call this an emergency fund. An emergency fund is exactly what it sounds like. It is money you have saved up specifically to pay for unexpected, expensive events in your life. It is your financial shield. Most people go through life living paycheck to paycheck. They make just enough money to cover their rent, their groceries, their phone bill, and maybe a little bit of fun on the weekend. As long as everything goes perfectly according to plan, they feel like they are doing okay. But life never goes perfectly according to plan. Eventually, something will break, something will go wrong. It is not a matter of if it will happen, but when it will happen. Imagine it is a Tuesday morning. You are driving to work, listening to the radio, and suddenly your car makes a horrible grinding noise. Smoke starts pouring out from under the hood. You pull over to the side of the road, your car is dead. You get the car towed to the mechanic. A few hours later, the mechanic calls you and gives you the bad news. The repair is going to cost $800. If you do not have an emergency fund, that phone call is a complete disaster. You panic. You do not have $800 in your regular checking account. Your rent is due next week. You need your car to get to work. If you cannot get to work, you will lose your job. The stress becomes overwhelming. You feel like your entire life is collapsing over one broken car part. Because you are desperate, you do what millions of other people do. You pull out a credit card, you tell the mechanic to put the $800 on the card. In that moment, you feel a brief sense of relief. You get your car back, you can drive to work again, but you did not actually solve the financial problem. You just delayed it and you made it much worse. That credit card probably charges a 20% interest rate or higher. Because you are already tight on money, you can only afford to make the minimum payment every month. Months go by. You are paying $30 here, $40 there. The credit card company keeps adding interest charges. By the time you finally pay off that $800 repair, it has taken you 2 years and you have actually paid over $1,000 because of the interest. This is the debt trap. One random Tuesday morning emergency pushes you into a cycle of debt that drains your future paychecks. And what happens if 3 months later you drop your phone and shatter the screen? Or you get sick and have to pay a medical bill? You put that on the credit card too. The pile of debt grows and your freedom shrinks. Now, let us rewind time. Let us look at that exact same Tuesday morning. But this time, you have an emergency fund. You have $3,000 sitting in a boring, totally basic savings account at your local bank. Your car breaks down, smoke pours out of the engine, you get it towed to the mechanic. The mechanic calls and says it will cost $800 to fix. You are definitely annoyed. Nobody likes spending $800 on car repairs. It is frustrating, but you do not panic. Your heart rate does not spike. You do not worry about losing your job. You simply go to the bank, transfer the $800 from your emergency fund to your checking account, and pay the mechanic with cash. The emergency has been downgraded to a minor inconvenience. You do not owe any money to a credit card company. You do not have to pay any interest. You simply go back to work the next day and start saving a little bit each month to replace the $800 you took out of the fund. This is the true power of an emergency fund. It protects your peace of mind. It puts a barrier between you and the disaster. It ensures that a bump in the road does not flip your entire life upside down. Let us look at another example. Imagine you own a small home. You wake up in the middle of the night and hear a dripping sound. You walk into your living room and water is leaking through the ceiling. Your roof has a hole in it. You call a roof repair company. They come over the next morning and tell you it will cost $2,000 to fix the damage and patch the roof. If you do not fix it immediately, the water will cause mold, ruin your floors, and cost 10 times as much to repair later. You have to act fast. Without an emergency fund, you are forced to take out a personal loan or max out your credit cards. You are making a huge financial decision while you are stressed and exhausted. That is the worst time to borrow money. But if you have an emergency fund of $3,000 to $5,000, you just pay the roofer. The problem is solved by lunchtime. Your home is safe and your financial future is protected. A lot of people hear about emergency funds and they ask a very common question. They say, why should I leave thousands of dollars in a boring bank account? The bank pays almost no interest. Inflation makes the money lose value over time. Should I not invest that money in the stock market so it can grow? This is a huge mistake. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what an emergency fund actually is. An emergency fund is not an investment. An investment is money you use to build wealth over decades. You want investments to grow, but investments carry risk. An emergency fund is totally different. An emergency fund is insurance. You do not expect insurance to make you rich. You expect insurance to be there when everything goes terribly wrong. If you put your emergency money into the stock market, you are exposing your safety net to risk. The stock market goes up, but it also goes down. Imagine the economy enters a rough patch. The stock market drops by 30%. Because the economy is bad, your company decides they have to let people go, and you lose your job. Now you have an emergency. You have no income, and you need to pay rent. You go to your investment account to get your money, but the thousands of dollars you put in are now worth much less because the market crashed. You are forced to sell your investments at a huge loss just to survive. That is why the emergency fund must remain boring. It must be held in cash. It must be held in a simple bank account where it cannot go down in value. Even if inflation eats away a tiny bit of its buying power over time, that is simply the cost you pay for absolute safety and immediate access. So, how much money should you actually keep in this boring bank account? For a complete beginner who is just starting to take control of their finances, the very first goal is $1,000. Why $1,000? Because that amount of money covers a surprising number of everyday emergencies. It covers a set of new tires. It covers a trip to the emergency room for a broken arm. It covers a sudden emergency flight to visit a sick family member. It covers a broken refrigerator. Once you have $1,000 saved, you will feel a massive difference in your daily stress levels. You will sleep better at night. You will no longer live in fear of the check engine light on your dashboard. But $1,000 is just the starter fund. It is your initial armor. The long-term goal is to build that fund up to something much stronger. The sweet spot for most regular people is having somewhere between 3 months and 6 months worth of living expenses saved up. For a lot of folks, that falls right around the $3,000 to $5,000 mark. If you spend $2,000 a month on your basic needs like housing, food, and utilities, then a 3-month emergency fund would be $6,000. This larger fund is designed to protect you against the biggest emergency of all, which is losing your primary source of income. If you lose your job and you have zero savings, you are forced to take the very first job you find, even if it is a terrible job that pays less, just so you can eat. You have no negotiating power. But if you have 3 months of living expenses sitting in your boring bank account, you have breathing room. You can take your time. You can spend a month recovering, updating your resume, and going to interviews for a job that you actually want. The cash gives you the power to choose. Now we need to talk about the hardest part for most people. How do you actually save this money when it feels like your entire paycheck disappears the moment you get it? Building an emergency fund takes time and it takes discipline. It is not going to happen overnight. The first step is to look at where your money is currently going. You have to find the leaks in your financial bucket. Maybe you are paying for 3 different television streaming services, but you only really watch one. Cancel the other 2. That is $30 a month you can put toward your fund. Maybe you eat at restaurants for lunch 4 times a week. If you bring a sandwich from home for just 2 of those days, you might save $40 a week. That is $160 a month. Another great way to kickstart your fund is to sell things you no longer need. Most of us have items gathering dust in our closets: old video games, clothes we never wear, furniture we do not need, or old electronics. Selling those items online or having a yard sale can easily generate a quick $500 to jumpstart your account. You can also look for temporary ways to increase your income. This is not about starting a complicated business. It is about working a few extra hours of overtime at your current job or doing some odd jobs on the weekend for a couple of months. You do not have to work extra forever, just long enough to reach your cash goal. Once you start accumulating this money, it is vital to keep it separated from your normal spending money. Do not keep your emergency fund in the exact same checking account that is attached to your daily debit card. If you do that, you will eventually accidentally spend it on groceries or entertainment. You want the money to be accessible, but slightly inconvenient to get to. Opening a separate high-yield savings account at a different bank is a great strategy. A high-yield savings account is just a normal savings account, but it pays a slightly better interest rate than traditional big banks. You can link it to your regular checking account. When an emergency happens, it takes 1 or 2 days to transfer the money over. That slight delay is actually a good thing. It forces you to pause and ask yourself a very critical question. Is this a real emergency? This brings us to the most important rule of having an emergency fund. You must strictly define what an emergency is and what it is not. A lot of people save up $1,000 and then they see an amazing sale on a new flat screen television. They tell themselves that the sale is an emergency because they will miss out on a great deal. A television is never an emergency. A weekend trip with your friends is not an emergency. Buying holiday presents for your family is not an emergency because holidays happen at the same time every single year. You should plan for those things in your regular monthly budget. A true emergency has 3 specific characteristics. First, it is unexpected. Second, it is necessary. Third, it is urgent. Your furnace dying in the middle of a freezing winter is unexpected. It is absolutely necessary to fix so your pipes do not freeze, and it is highly urgent. That is a true emergency. You take the money out, you fix the heat, and you move on. A medical bill from a sudden illness is unexpected, necessary, and urgent. That is a true emergency. A flat tire on the car you use to drive to work is unexpected, necessary, and urgent. That is a true emergency. When you use the money for a true emergency, you will experience a strange mix of emotions. You will feel annoyed that you had to spend the money. It hurts to watch your savings account drop back down to zero after you work so hard to build it up. But at the exact same time, you will feel an incredible wave of relief. You will realize that the system worked. You protected yourself. You did not have to beg family members for a loan. You did not have to swipe a credit card at 25% interest. You handled a major adult crisis with absolute calm and preparation. Once the crisis is over and the dust settles, your job is simple. You go right back to saving. You make refilling the emergency fund your top financial priority. You cut back on eating out again. You save a portion of every paycheck again. And you build the wall back up until you hit your goal amount. Financial peace does not come from having an extremely complicated stock portfolio or owning cryptocurrency. Real financial peace comes from knowing that when life throws a brick at your head, you have a helmet on. If you want to start making progress with your money right now, today, do not worry about investing yet. Do not worry about advanced tax strategies. Just focus on gathering your first $1,000. Put it in a safe, separate, boring account. Protect it aggressively. If you like this type of videos and enjoy learning, subscribe and stay updated for our next videos. Have a great day.